So bottom line, let me wrap this up by saying this. Google Ads is an amazing thing. PPC is an amazing thing. But if you don't plan on having someone in your organization be intimately involved in either setting up or intimately involved with the vendor that is doing Google Ads, you are going to be burning money for nothing, by definition. Hi, welcome to another episode of Baktari MD. As you know, this season we've been talking about Crash CEO School, where we're going to give you the top tips and strategies to improve your leadership and grow your business. Today, I want to talk about Google Ads, or as they say, PPC, and Google is just one form of strategy in terms of marketing, which is pay-per-click or PPC. So what I want to do is give you the top secrets to have a very successful PPC, both in terms of driving business to you and also saving money. Those are both going to be very important. So before I go through those top tips, let's just talk about PPC or Google Ads for people who are not totally familiar with it. So basically, when people go and search for Google, let's say they're looking for a flower shop near them, Google will go through the algorithm and present in whatever order they think is relevant to that person the sequence of all the flower shops or florists in that area that that person is looking. So with PPC or Google Ads, flower shops have an opportunity to pay Google to post an ad often on top of the organic search. And I think we're all familiar with it. It just says ads next to it. So those are basically people who've set up their own account with Google, have set up campaigns and ad groups, and they are now competing with the organic results for your attention. So if you want to start a business and you don't necessarily think you're going to be the top of Google for what you're looking for, or your other competitors are already putting ads, often it forces you to go ahead and put ads into Google. Well, obviously Google is who they are because of the success of this Google Ads. A large portion of their revenue comes from this because it's one of the very few marketing strategies out there that's success-based often. Not directly, but sort of indirectly. And let me talk about what success-based means. If you put an ad on a billboard, they're going to charge you, let's say, $3,000 a month to have your ad. They don't give you any guarantee that anyone's going to go to your website or make a phone call. So that is not a success-based advertising strategy. If you even place an ad on the radio, or if you place an ad in a magazine or in the newspaper. And for those of you who don't know what newspaper is, it's this paper thing that used to open up and there used to be information on it, but that's another podcast. Anyway, but all joking aside, when you place ads in those kind of marketing material, you are essentially committing to pay a certain fee for the privilege of being there. But there is no guarantee that even one person is going to call you, okay? And it may be successful, but again, there's no correlation when you first set up that account and pay the bill. One of Google's real amazing thing, and it probably explains their unbelievable success, is they actually align with the advertiser and said, listen, if someone sees your ad but doesn't click or call you, we're not going to charge you. That's pretty revolutionary if you look at advertising in the last 50, 100 years. There are not many newspapers, magazines, billboards, or anything that will say, hey, we don't care if people see your ad, we only care if they actually call you. So in one way, that probably explains why Google has taken over the world in terms of advertising revenue, because they were one of the first ones to have an alignment with the advertiser and saying, you only pay us for supposed successes. Of course, we know just because they call or go to your website doesn't mean they're going to buy, but it's a lot closer correlation than the other way, which is you have no idea. So obviously that's helped Google, and it's helped many businesses grow in ways that they could have never imagined, ever, because to be able to open up a store, open up a website, and somehow be at the top of a search, depending on how much money you're willing to pay, will allow you to be literally open for business overnight. The next thing I want to talk about is Google Ads right for you? Because not every business is meant for Google Ads or PPC. The thing you have to think about is your typical customer or clientele. Do they search for that product or service? Now, think about this for a second, because I think on the surface, everyone would say, of course, but clearly there are services and products that people do not always search for. That when I say search for, I'm talking about the majority of your clients. Not the majority of every business clients comes from Google Ads. I would venture to guess the typical nail salon in your neighborhood mall gets a lot more business from people who are visiting the grocery store and see it, or have a friend that goes there. So there are certain businesses that lend itself to Google search. And the first thing you have to do is decide if your business lends itself to Google search. What percent of your business comes from search, right? Versus referrals, drive-by, or a thing that actually requires someone else, like a doctor referring to another doctor, a referral system where Google search wouldn't really matter, especially in the medical field. Often what specialists you see is dictated by your insurance company, and it's dictated by, for example, your doctor, and what your network is. That's just one example where you can't necessarily just search and go. And there are other examples like that. So the first thing you have to decide is my business, does it lend itself to Google search or PPC in general? And if it does, if you say, you know what, the majority of people or a high percentage of people looking for this service are going to search for it versus any other way of finding it, right? Sometimes people, just go to a local bar because it's in their neighborhood. How many people actually search up a bar near me? If they live in that neighborhood, they probably have driven by. How many people search nearest gasoline station, right? Very few people probably search for nearest gasoline station, right? Because most people probably pick where they're going to go for gas by just driving by or on their way home or what have you. So again, I'm giving you examples, but there are many more. And there's also examples that are in the middle, that Google search gives you some, but you also get a good chunk of your business by another way. So let's get that out of the way. So first things first, you got to decide, do my clients search for me anyway? And if they do, then you're there. The next thing you got to really decide before you look at Google Ads is, where are you organically? Okay, if you need to be found on Google search, and you're on page 10 because you just started your business last week, that's not the same as being already number 1 or number 2 on the organic portion of the search. So if I search up keywords that would be relevant to your business and in that area, and you're number 2 or 3, the urgency for Google Ads may still be there, but it's not the same as when you're on page 10 and you can't be found. So before you kind of size up your appetite for Google Ads or PPC, you have to understand, where are you organically? And you should, by the way, there's a whole separate talk, you should be on track to improve your SEO so you can be on top of your SEO so you can rank organically. I've done a talk on SEO. I'll put a link up there to that so you can see it. But SEO and PPC should both be done simultaneously, because the higher your organic is, the less reliant you will be or have to be on getting people to come to you based on paying for it. Okay? So I think we've got the premise of this down. But now let's talk about, how do you go about it? Well, the way you go about it is you go on Google or Bing or any of the other ones, and you set up an account. and you have to get familiar with their cloud-based software and how to set up your ads. To be truthful, this is probably the most daunting aspect of Google Ads. It's not complicated, but it will require you to spend a lot of time to become familiar with the software. I would liken it to Photoshop. If you know nothing about Photoshop and you wanted to go on there and start editing pictures, or if you wanted to start doing videos, you would have to spend some time to get the learning curve you need to learn Google Ads. So you either have to learn Google Ads or someone in your team. Again, this talk is meant for CEOs. So as you're thinking about whether you want to approach Google Ads, you have to think, do I have someone in-house or someone in the leadership that understands Google Ads, understands the software, could navigate the software, and get us the results that we want? It is very, very difficult to learn all the aspects of Google Ads software in a short couple of weeks. It takes months and sometimes even longer to become so proficient. Now, if you don't learn Google Ads and don't become proficient at it and you just take a stab at it, more than likely you're going to be squandering a lot of money. So whatever your budget will be, you're going to wind up spending a portion of it on wasteful stuff if you haven't set up your campaigns, keywords, negative keywords correctly. So I'm going to talk about that. So I want to talk about the first decision. Do you do Google Ads in-house, or do you give it to someone else? Well, both of those have a blessing and a curse, advantages and disadvantages, and I want to go through that before we talk about the tips. So obviously, if you have someone in-house that knows the software inside out, it's in your best interest to have it in-house, and I'm going to explain why. Because Google Ads efficiency is really a component of two things. How well do you know the software? How well can you set up the ad groups? How well can you set up the campaigns? How well can you set up the keywords, the negative keywords, the dynamic keyword replacements, and a whole host of other things? If you have that in-house, you have a big advantage because the person who is in-house also knows your business, knows what kind of clients you want to attract, knows what kind of clients you don't want to attract. What are high-value clients? What are low-value clients? What are clients that have large margins? What are clients that have low margins? What are clients that are a lot of work? What are clients or businesses or products that are less? So there's an inherent advantage by having it in-house, only in the sense that if the person setting up the campaign also understands the business, they will have a material advantage. Let's talk about the disadvantages of that. The disadvantage, of course, is you have to learn Google Ads, which is very daunting, and you have to acquire a lot of high-level skills to make it really hum and save you money. So let's talk about outsourcing. And I think most people outsource their Google Ads because of the reasons I just mentioned. If you outsource Google Ads, you will have the advantage because it's one less thing on your plate, your company's plate. It's one thing you don't have to deal with. And if you vetted out the right company and they know what they're doing, you can skip that learning curve on how to run the software. The disadvantage is probably going to be more expensive because not only do you pay for the Google Ads, but you pay for their service, which is often an extra 20% or so on your spend, often, or maybe structured differently, but that's a common way. And you also have the theoretical disadvantage that they don't know your business like you do, right? So when they're setting up your keywords and negative keywords, and they're setting up your ad groups and campaigns, they're not going to fully understand necessarily how your business is structured. Now, if you have a very common business, you're just a personal injury attorney, or you have some very common thing. There are Google Ads companies that specialize in setting up Google Ads for personal injury attorneys. So obviously they do, but often companies that do Google Ads have a potpourri of clients. They have a florist, they have a funeral home, they have whatever. And they're not experts on all those fields and what is the ideal target. And now they'll have meetings with you and they'll have you maybe try to let them understand that. But that's the first few hours maybe of your first, meeting when you're starting the campaign. But they're not going to be necessarily meeting with you every week and trying to better understand your business often, as well as running your Google Ads. So I'm of the belief that you're probably not going to have the component where you get input of what you really, really need and want like you would if it was in-house. But so those are the advantage and disadvantage of having Google Ads in-house versus having Google Ads done by an outside vendor. All right, so let's go through the top tips for how to improve your Google Ads campaign. By improve, I mean you either spend less money for the same number of clicks and results, or you eliminate clicks that you don't want or you wouldn't want in the sense that it wouldn't be helping your business. So a lot of that, of course, has to do with how well you set up your keywords, ads, and campaign structure. My strong recommendation is if you do that in-house, you're naturally going to probably know the categories and the ad groups that you want. So focusing on your campaigns and being aware that there are campaigns and underneath those are subgroups, think of it, that are addressing that. So if you have a broad category and then you want ads for subcategories of that, those would be called ad groups within a campaign. Tip number one, you have to be involved in setting up the structure, because only you know. You may not know Google Ads, you may not know the software, but only you know who you want to be coming to your website or making a phone call to you. And you will have to communicate that, if it's in-house, to your in-house person. If it's not, then to the other person, to the outsourced person. So understand that you can't just hire a company and just say, set up my Google Ads campaign, here's a check, and then wait for your Google Ads to appear. You need to get involved, because more than likely, if it's in-house and the person has never actually set up a campaign for your organization, you're going to have a lot of meetings. And certainly if you're outsourcing it, yes, they're going to have clients in 30, 40 different businesses, and how they understand your business is going to be up to you. Having an hour or two meeting before you launch the campaign is probably not going to be enough, but picking and choosing those things are going to be important to your success. So the next tip I really want to talk about is what we call negative keywords. And while that may sound daunting, I want to explain it, and I want to explain how you can use negative keywords to literally save thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars a month on Google spend. Negative keywords are phrases that you will tell Google that if someone uses that word or that phrase, you don't want your ad to appear. Now, this may seem, okay, I'll just come up with the 10, 15 words that I wouldn't want. Like, you don't want the word free if you're selling a service, obvious words, and things that for sure you could come up with. But the problem really is the hundreds and often thousands, and sometimes tens of thousands of words that you can't even dream that might trigger your ad. Let's go back to the florist example. So let's say you put up an ad, flower shop, right? That's the keyword. And somebody puts in a keyword, how to open up a flower shop. Do you want to pay $5 for someone to click your ad, right? Because they want to open up a flower shop, but you're selling flowers, right? And that's just one. So you may have to put the phrase, open up as a negative keyword to block your ad from appearing when someone's looking for how to start the business, and on and on and on and on. So what I have found is the most successful campaigns are the ones that literally spend every day, every week, adding more negative keywords. And I'm going to tell you how you do that. Okay, that's going to be the next thing. So understanding how negative keywords impact your spend and And then whatever money you do spend are really clicks that you want. And this negative keyword thing almost has to be an obsession. And one tip I would give on that is literally what Google will show you every day. Let's say you got 100 clicks that you paid for. Google will tell you what exactly they typed in. So if every day at the end of the business day, you go and look at all of the clicks that you got and look at and then you'll recognize, oh my gosh, that person is searching for this. I would never want that person to click, but they did anyway. But you're going to make sure no one does that again by taking a snippet of their search and putting it as a negative keyword or a negative phrase. And it's almost like, a cleansing process where you cleanse your Google Ads campaign. Now, to be very frank with you, we did that for years on our Google Ads campaign, where we continuously try to come up with negative keywords and strategies. And just when you think you can't think of any negative keywords, you go through last week's search terms and you're like, oh my gosh, another 50 things that we can put as negative key terms. Or when was the first florist shop? What is the history of florist shops? Who started the first florist shop? Do florist shop make money? You do not probably want those searches. But if you just put florist shop as a keyword, you're going to get all those searches. And believe it or not, some of those people click on your ad and you pay for it. So I'm personally convinced if every appropriate negative keyword could magically be inserted in Google Ads in every campaign they have, I think Google would lose 40% of their revenue. It's part of what is their revenue model because it's not their fault because they don't know they don't know your business. So if you have a budget of $10,000 a month, it's not unheard of for $5,000 of that to be completely wasted. And what's interesting is that often people then increase their budget because they want more business, right? So you spend $10,000 a month and you get a certain amount of business and you're like, well, okay, let's even get more business. You could either spend $20,000 a month or you could improve the efficiency of your campaign and lower it down to $5,000, then bump it up back to $10,000. So when you work on your negative keywords and your ad groups, you actually create efficiency. And one of the biggest mistakes, and this is really the next tip, is that people create a campaign and walk away, whether it's in-house or it's given to an outside vendor. It's for sure more common when it's given to an outside vendor because they simply get paid based on your spend. There is no, unless you have a very high-end relationship with a complicated contract, there is no way to incentivize them to make your campaign more efficient. The only incentive is they want to hold you on to a client, and obviously if you don't get any business, you're eventually going to maybe stop your Google Ads. But even so, I think a lot of these outside vendors are okay with just losing one client, getting another. So my sense of it is if you outsource it and you're not involved, almost by definition, you will be wasting a certain percentage of your spend. Plus, you'll be giving them 20% or some number on top of your spend. One of the most common things I have seen when my colleagues say they have a Google Ads campaign that they've outsourced to another vendor, I will ask them permission to go into their Google Ads campaign. And you can see from the history, they may have had that campaign for 3 years, but it hasn't been touched in 2.5 years because there's no incentive for an outside vendor to keep working on your campaign. Remember, they're getting paid usually by your spend, not by your efficiency or how good, how appropriate those clicks are. Does this make sense? So I would say the most common mistake I see is people get a vendor, they set up the campaigns look good, the ad groups looks good, the keywords look good, they put in maybe 10, 20 negative keywords, things like free or other things that are obvious keywords. But the real time and energy is every day or every week going through your search terms and plucking out the nuggets that you don't want again. So if you're spending $10,000 a month on Google Ads, but only 5,000 of them was for clicks that you would have wanted, you're literally burning through $5,000 for nothing, as well as giving this outside vendor a percentage above that, right? And so if you're going to do it in-house, I recommend you understand how to set up keywords and campaigns, but really understand how to set up negative keywords, probably as the most important rule, but there are more. And then if you have an outside vendor and you want to go that route because you don't have the expertise in-house, you should have weekly, bi-weekly meetings. You should get them to send you a copy of all the search terms you got that week, that month, that day often, and you go through it if they haven't. And also ask them, will you be going through the search terms and understanding which search terms need to have a negative keyword so it doesn't happen again. Now, one of the things that they may say is, well, listen, we didn't know you didn't want that because we don't know your business inside out. We have clients in 100 different fields, so we don't know what an automotive repair shop wants. Maybe a flat tire. We thought getting someone with a flat tire was good for you, but you're telling me you're more of an auto body repair, and your high price tickets are repairing body work, not the tires. Well, we didn't know that. So you would have to sit there and say, we really don't want to fix flat tires. We really want to work on body work. That's where our expertise is. That's where most of our staff is. So, and I'm just using this as an example. So if you don't communicate your business priorities to whoever is doing your Google Ads, you're pretty much screwed, because if they don't know what's important to you, they will randomly pick what they think should be important to you. And often what you're going to find is what they picked, well-intentioned, is not necessarily what you thought. So bottom line, let me wrap this up by saying this. Google Ads is an amazing thing. PPC is an amazing thing. But if you don't plan on having someone in your organization be intimately involved in either setting up or intimately involved with the vendor that is doing Google Ads, you are going to be burning money for nothing, by definition. And how much money you burn is going to be a combination of how well you've communicated your business to whoever's setting it up, and also how dedicated that company is or that person is. Again, I've seen outside vendors who do PPC literally set up a campaign for a client, walk away and never, ever touch it again. And I've had people who've been paying 20% month after month, year after year. And when you set up an account with an outside vendor, say, how often will you be looking at my campaign? How much time will you be putting? Will you be sharing with me, my search terms, which is super key? Will you be and if you have conversion data, will you be searching? Will you be sending me the conversion data? Will you be telling me which campaigns are doing better than what, so we can tweak them? Again, I think if I had to summarize this whole video, is you cannot set up a Google Ads campaign and walk away and pray for the best. You or someone in your organization has to be intimately involved. If you look at it the way I was explaining, where in this hypothetical where you're spending $10,000 a month on Google Ads and 5,000 of it is blown for nothing, you could theoretically hire a full-time staff just to do this and break even or even make a little money depending on the person. Or if you're spending $20,000 a month and you're wasting $10,000, you can actually, when you look at the money you're wasting, you could actually bring someone in-house that did nothing but keep track of what's going on with your Google Ads campaign. And lastly, you may find out, though, in setting up this Google Ads campaign, if it's done correctly, you may actually find out that Google Ads is not for you and that it doesn't really drive business your way, that the people who click are not buying, and you can get that through conversion data. And so you may have to completely, reassess whether Google Ads is for you. But if it is for you, then it's just a matter of driving the ROI, which gets me to my last point. Once you get to this point where you fine-tune this machine, one of the things that I often see is people put a budget on their Google Ads. And if people put a budget on their Google Ads, it almost by definition means that they're not getting a good ROI. The example I like to give is if someone comes up to me and says, listen, for every $1 I give you, I'll give you $2 back. Would I put a budget on that? Would I? No, there's no budget. There's no limit. If you tell me every time I give you $1, you're going to give me $2 back, why would I put a limit on it? There's no budget on. So people will say, well, we have a $10,000 budget on Google Ads. I'm like, why? Right? Because if you're now initially it might be cash flow, but if it's working, if every time you spend $10,000 on Google Ads, you get $30,000 in revenue, why would you put a budget on it? So what I think is happening is a lot of times the ROI is not that good. Maybe slightly good, slightly positive, but the ROI is not fantastic. So that should be a signal that either Google Ads is not for you, or the website you're taking to is not doing its thing, or you are getting a lot of clicks that you shouldn't be paying for. So your goal, your overall strategy should be to constantly improve your Google Ads so you can get to the point where you don't have a budget, right? That would be ideal. And at a certain point, you will saturate the market. There's only so many people looking for, a florist in this neighborhood. So ideally, if you're a local business, you should naturally get to a budget that maximizes out the number of searches for your business. Obviously, if you're national or whatever. Now, some people use Google Ads for other things. For example, they use it just for brand awareness and whatever. So I'm not talking about all that. So, and some people just need to be seen, need to be in the market, blah, blah, blah. This is for businesses that actually need to make money from their Google Ads, if this makes sense. And if you're the CEO, the buck stops with you. Hopefully you've watched this video and you're going to whoever's in charge and you are going to make sure that they understand that they have a responsibility to make sure your PPC or Google Ads is as efficient as humanly possible. That's going to take time, daily time, weekly time for months and years. If you don't have the bandwidth to do that, you're probably going to waste money on Google Ads. Now, if your ROI is so great that you can blow half your budget on wasted clicks and still make money, more power to you, right? That just means you've got such a great product that people want and your margins are so high that even if you waste half your budget, it's still worth it to you. Okay, I've said a lot. So please, if you have any comments, if you've had some experiences, love to hear from you. If you've had good, bad, if you've done it in-house, if you outsourced it, love to hear from you. Please, if you like content like this, please don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment below. Okay, thank you so much. Have an amazing day.